All right. Hey everyone. Welcome to another deep dive. I have with me today. This is your second or third time on.
I believe my third.
Your third. Well, welcome back. I think the only other person I've had on three times is Edgar. So you're in good company. This is Ugur from API3.
API3. Yes.
Yeah. No, I think kind of the reason I reached out is there's been a whole lot of talk recently, or other people have been starting to actually look into it, even though we've probably been talking about it for like 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, like people are realizing it's a thing, which is OEV, um, Oracle Extractable Value. Was hoping that I could kind of get you to go over maybe what is OEV, at least how you guys see it, and then what kind of the problem is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the problem stems pretty much from the fact that, let's say, there's a discrepancy between real world data and what is actually reflected on chain. As everyone knows, updating the chain every single second is not very feasible. And if you take it even further, or you can't even update every second on something like Ethereum. So even if you would update every block, there is going to be some sort of discrepancy. And then the question becomes, what happens in that discrepancy? So what does the Oracle update eventually trigger, or what does the lack of an Oracle update not trigger? And he who controls essentially that mechanism can control the Oracle extractable value. For instance, if I update the Oracle and afterwards I can liquidate somebody, that update has intrinsically more value than any other update, for instance. And that is how I would define it. And obviously, you can spin it the other way around. What happens if an Oracle, for instance, not updates on purpose? Maybe somebody pays that Oracle to not update, so a certain position doesn't get liquidated on that 50% wick, and then it was oopsie daisy, the Oracle just malfunctioned. All good, the market is back. Like, you can also spin it that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I usually like to think of it very similar to MEV, right?
Yeah,
If the price on a SEX changes the price of an asset, there's a giant arbitrage on Uniswap. First person in basically gets the rights to
yeah,
that juicy
pretty much.
arbitrage. And usually in the case of MEV, it will probably just go to the validator themselves, so the builder, if you will. Um, but in the Oracle case, there's another party in that there's like a whitelisted person who's allowed to do it, which is like, the Oracle,
Yeah,
um,
correct.
which is a little bit different. And kind of on MEV, there's, I guess, yeah, maybe you can go over your guys' solution. Like, how do you solve this? Like,
Yeah. So, like, the first issue is you basically you have something that you want to offer the market, but you have to create some scarcity. So basically, there's a lot of stuff out there called a pull oracle. I'm pretty sure people listening to this know what a pull oracle is. The moment you allow instantaneous pull oracles for anyone, you cannot in any way recapture the OEV from like an Oracle perspective, other than, for instance, whitelisting who is allowed on a contractual level. Maybe the DApp restricts who's allowed to do liquidations and such. But the moment you basically give the valuable asset, which is the real time data, to anyone for free, you cannot sell the same thing to anyone else wanting it because it's already for free. So you have to create some type of scarcity, and there's different ways of how people are doing this. I know of Piff's solution. I looked into it for presentation, I believe, like 6 months ago. What they do is basically the first one. They don't necessarily restrict who has access to the data, but they force dApps to restrict who is allowed to do something with that data. So basically, you would only allow PIF's Express Relay, I believe it was called, to perform liquidations, and then any one of the liquidators can pull in the latest data anyway and do that. So basically, this is permission based, and then there's a different way, which is you somehow create an advantage for somebody that pays for the data. And how we do that is we operate the regular oracles, but we introduced a slight delay to them. Currently, that's 30 seconds. So basically, if you kind of have to. You can compare it to like a TWAP, how it would be lagging behind a bit, but it's not really. Like, it is the real time data, just with a 30-second artificial delay. And now, because the underlying oracle is delayed, you can sell the actual real-time data for somebody willing to pay for it. So effectively, you're giving somebody a 30-second advantage if they're willing to pay for it. Otherwise, the regular oracles will just update. And now it becomes really interesting because the market, if nothing is going on, nobody's going to pay for an update. But if there's an opportunity, everyone will always choose to pay to capture that opportunity. And now you kind of created effectively an auction mechanism on the Oracle layer where we have the regular highway, I like to call it, and the toll highway, which allows you to go a tiny bit faster and front run everyone taking the regular highway.
Yeah. So kind of like to compare back to MEV land, you would have like a flashbot style auction for the right to update the Oracle price. And
Correct.
the winner of it gets to do it. And then I'm guessing the proceeds of those auctions go to the DApp or.
Yeah, like there's different things that people do. We have an 80-20 split, so basically whatever the auction proceeds are, 80% goes to the DApp and we take a 20% cut. I believe the numbers vary, if I'm not mistaken. I think Chainlink's thing is 60-40. It's different
Well, doesn't
numbers.
UMA have a thing too? Or
Yeah, but that kind of got killed by the Chainlink thing because
yeah.
UMA basically what they did is they just plugged themselves between oracles and did what I said what we were doing. They basically just delayed updates and sold the right to unlock an update to the highest bidder, but you don't really need them. I think I also mentioned this in the presentation that I gave. Like, this all works until the underlying oracle decides, hey, I will do this myself, which Chainlink did. I prophesized that they're not going to ignore this. They can cut somebody out and do the same thing without needing them, essentially another mouth to feed.
Yeah. So, and I'm guessing you're like this is similar to MEV though, in that most of the time, like the auction mechanism itself is outside of the chain, right?
Yeah, correct. It depends how people want to do it. As far as I know, I can just compare it to the Chainlink one currently, which is basically the Yuma one, just with them cut out. So what happens is with Chainlink, they basically have you have the opportunity. The data on the chain is delayed by a certain amount of blocks on mainnet, and you have the option to effectively partake in an auction. The Chainlink Dawn basically just sells or gives the latest data to Flashbots. Like, Chainlink just plugs into the Flashbots MEV share API, as far as I know, as far as I looked into it, and then basically allows somebody to unlock or get the latest Chainlink price without that delay. The regular Dawn effectively just updates, continues updating, but you can get that advantage over there. And with us, we have that auction mechanism. So they use Flashbots for the auction mechanism. We have our own auction mechanism on our own layer 2. Might move that to layer 3, but currently it's like cheap. Like, it doesn't really matter. People go on there and partake in these auctions where they effectively get the right to update a specific data feed for a specific dApp on a specific chain. So it's broken down very nichely, so that if you have, for instance, multiple dApps on the same chain using the same underlying global feed that is delayed, you still need to, just for accounting purposes, be able to separate them, and also to make sure that a update on, for instance, Compound doesn't cause a possible liquidation on Aave, because then now you're making it more complicated and you might not get all the opportunities, because then you basically tell the searcher you need to, with your update, be able to liquidate on two, three protocols at once. And here that's not necessary. You can partake in effectively separate auctions for every single opportunity on every single dApp.
Yeah, because this is a kind of a common problem with oracles, you could say, in that it you can just be like a parasitic user of an oracle,
Yeah.
right? Like, and you don't have to pay. So I was wondering about that. Like, how do you would you be better off just like reading, if you know
You
everyone's,
can
yeah, sorry.
you can, like, any dApp is welcome to just read, let's for instance say the compound proxy that gives the OEV to them. But if any searcher realizes that they can also update knowing that there's another dApp reading that, and all of the proceeds will go to compound. So now you've effectively given up any OEV that you had, because that's the data feed of compound, and we will be paying compound.
Right. So it solves it a little bit, you could say.
Yeah, but basically, you could also have people like form cartels or whatever and be like, everybody use this and we share it equally or whatever, because then you get more granular updates maybe. But for us, we don't really care. Like, we need to know who we pay and who's using which feed, and it also breaks down the opportunities in a very nice way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other way to solve OEV, right, is solving it in protocol and kind of limiting these opportunities, right?
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, that also depends how you do it. You're
sure.
probably gonna talk about Euler, I guess.
Yeah.
For instance, yeah, I mean, they're still OEV. We're talking with them. Like, the only thing that Euler does is they start with a lower um, liquidation penalty. So it starts at 1% and it increases by 1% with time passing until somebody decides, well, that's worth it now. But there is still effectively OEV. Like, I could, for instance, update and always take the 1%. I'm still effectively stealing because I control the update. I decide when that 1% is made available, and I just take it every time. And I'm pretty sure at a certain size, even that 1% is worth it for the searcher. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like, did we see much, like, do you know, did we see much OEV being captured by oracles, or was it sort of just rolled into MEV like over the past few years?
It's basically just being rolled into MEV. I made a post in the compound forum, I believe, at the beginning of February when we had that massive crash. I'm not sure if it was massive, but it was the biggest dollar valued crash in crypto history. And I think just in that 1 week or so, Compound paid out like 5.6 million or so, and they make like 9 million a year in revenue. So basically, that single event, they paid external actors over like 50% of what they make in a year, which is, yeah, a bit retarded if you think about it.
Sure. But I mean, did we ever see like the oracles themselves front running in any way? Like, like I've always thought like you could see like the chain link operator themselves being the OEV person. And
Yeah, you mean where they basically do it themselves maliciously, or not even maliciously, they just front run. I mean, you can, like, technically, there's nothing that stops you from this. This is pretty similar, I would say, to how all the lending protocols, like, maybe with the exception of Aave, but every single one of them is running their own liquidator bots, and
I
everyone
think
knows
like
that.
DYDX got accused of it. I think,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
but every lending protocol does this. Like, if you look at it, and we've been working with them, like, maybe the exception is Aave because they're big enough to have more people interested in liquidating. But most other teams have all their own bots running in one way or another. So this actually also becomes a bit of a problem, because when we developed all of this, the assumption was that there's a healthy network of searchers, and this is actually money that the dApp is not making. But it actually turns out they're already getting all of that money, and it's becoming increasingly harder to sell them. Well, you can actually get the money you're already getting, which is kind of hilarious. But um,
Yeah, like why don't they just whitelist it then and then make it like
because the pretense of anyone can
right.
partake in this, and like, this is why I also said it kind of depends. For instance, we could run our own stuff and we test it and so on. But the important part is that it's open and everyone can join and partake. And that's effectively the same what happens with all of these lending protocols. Yes, they're running their own bots, but if you're better than them, if you have a better RPC or whatnot, you can still beat, like it's a fair game. They have no advantage. And similarly in our system, it's like
Well,
it's fair game.
well, I've always wondered, like, why don't they just like delay the feed? Like, it's open for MEV after 10 seconds. Before that, it's the team. Then you like basically could say like, because like now it's like the shady part of the team where it like
Yeah,
it goes to the founders like personal wallets
yeah.
versus like it goes back to the DAO in some in some way. Um,
That's a good question. I think some people tried doing stuff like that. For instance, I believe Angle, they just whitelisted effectively the who's allowed to do liquidations. They partnered up with Propeller Heads, and they just had a 60-40 split. So they had one searching team doing any type of MEV, OEV activities, whatever, and recaptured it that way, basically. But they still gave up 60% of it. So it's some people are aware of it, and some honestly don't care because you have to be a certain size where this money also matters.
well, I feel like
Otherwise,
for most protocols, it like never matters until there's like that one liquidation event that happens like every year or
yeah,
something.
yeah. But even then, it kind of depends because if you have to compare it to the grand scheme of things, I would say, because you're probably better off using another oracle that promises you an airdrop of, let's say, 500K, which is for most parts gonna outperform any possible OEV that your dApp could create. So why do you care about the OEV then if somebody already gives you half a
Right.
mil upfront or something? Or you are going to drop your own token, so why do you care about 500K of OEV if you're going to make millions off of it? So like all of this assumes rational businesses that don't
Well,
take
they're rational,
bribes.
you could say. I
It,
mean,
I mean,
it's definitely
that's true.
rational.
Yeah, it's
Um,
rational. But like yeah, they're not really interested in actually getting the money that their product is leaking if somebody else just offers more.
sure. Well, I mean, all right, we can keep on the OEV topic for now.
Yeah,
Like what does OEV look like for like app chains? Is this just MEV for an app chain?
there you also have to update the Oracle, right? So I wouldn't necessarily say so. I mean, you mean like DYDX or something?
Yeah, like if we have this, if you see a world where like Maker is going to be moving to their own chain or Aave will eventually move to their own chain or something like that, like what does
I mean, somebody will still need to update the Oracle, right? So whoever controls that is gonna be controlling the OEV. Like the chain itself, as long as the chain doesn't have that Oracle price baked in somehow in the consensus or whatever, or if maybe the sequencer is just with every block updating 10 assets, there isn't much that you can do. I think I had a chat with Arbitrum about that because they released their time boost thing,
Yep.
and our auction actually front runs theirs because they can't control ours. And most of the MEV that happens on Arbitrum is liquidations. So that's what they said. At least I haven't looked into it. So they would be interested in if the Arbitrum DAO effectively doesn't want most of the if they want to recapture everything, they would actually be interested in telling the apps to not use, for instance, an OEV enabled Oracle. Because otherwise that money would flow back to the dApp. So the only thing Arbitrum would be doing is replacing the validator set that is currently on Ethereum, like effectively, if you look where the money goes. So Arbitrum wants it, but the OEV mechanism is still giving it back to the dApp. So they are not very interested in these things because that's money that they technically could be making.
Right, the sequencer is losing out on some of those
Yeah,
juicy
yeah,
rewards.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's actually so like well, you could see like what they would probably do is they would probably enshrine the oracles themselves. As
I would like if you want
yeah,
to recapture it yourself, then you would probably need to do that or have some sort of deal with the Oracle. That's also possible. Where actually heard of that, where the chain basically gets all of the OEV that happens minus the Oracle fee or whatever, and the dApps are forced to effectively use that Oracle or whatever else. Yeah,
yeah. No, I mean, yeah, kind of like on talking more Oracle trends in general. It seems like the trend for oracles is that like back when we were talking 2 or 3 years ago, like it would be, what's the staking and dispute mechanism behind some of these things? Like how do you actually keep these decentralized and secure in any way? Um, but now it seems like we're just signing APIs, right? Like
yeah,
like it seems like everyone's just okay with you have a central party, they're a business, they sign an API, and then anyone's allowed to pull in the API
yeah,
signed API and consume it. Mainly because that's like just the literal fastest design you can possibly do.
yeah,
Um,
pretty much.
right? Like you sign a SEX API and push it on chain.
For instance, yeah, or like you go to API businesses like CoinGecko, that's what we do, and they run something. Like you can, for instance, in our mechanism, get data from all independent API providers without us being in the middle. Like it is as decentralized as we can make it. And it's open to everyone with that 30-second delay. Like you could get all of the necessary signed data that you want and update the on-chain price. It's just that currently like nobody does. So what happens is like we update plus all of the underlying oracles update based on deviation and whatnot. And on top of that, you get the OEV updates. But yeah, this is, I would say, the fastest way. And honestly, like the longer this goes on, people care less and less about it. About like decentralization is kind of, I would say, a meme. And most OEV designs also like basically it's as centralized as it can get. Like somehow you need to create that advantage. And in the Chainlink model, you have the Dawn that is controlled by the Chainlink multisig, plus that then they just plug into the Flashbots, which at the current stage is also just basically a centralized server.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when it comes to OEV, the facade of like being centralized completely drops. You're kind of accepting centralization and some delays and whatnot for more money.
Right. Well, it was funny because like back, whenever there was a dispute mechanism, like you would be like, listen, you guys are going to have to accept a delay, and all of like any project was like, no way could we ever have a delay.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, we're kind of okay with the delay as long as we get the money back.
Basically, yeah, and
Um,
then it also depends on how big the delay is. For
right.
instance, people almost fought us for 30 seconds, and now Chainlink came out with a 1 minute delay, and everyone's actually fine with the 30 seconds. Like it becomes ridiculous. But yeah, that's the art if you can pay people.
Yeah. No, but I mean, even on like any of this stuff, talking price feeds, like people always want like you're trying to price a pool of collateral, and
Yeah,
like you need a real time price of this stuff, but like no one really talks like that. That's like kind of impossible. like
yeah.
like you can't, like theoretically, like even the exchanges differ in what the prices are, or like like
Also how often they update. Like
right,
for instance, I find it hilarious because some chains approach us and they're like, "Yeah, can we have an oracle that updates every second?" And if you look underlyingly, I believe CoinGecko updates their API prices every 5 seconds. So you can say that the oracle updates every second, but like the underlying data that
right.
you use is like it doesn't even update that fast. So what are you selling them? Like, yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, the same thing goes with like people want like an LST price for like a
yeah,
step, and it trades like 90% on curve. And you're like, listen, guys, like this is
yeah.
it's a 12-second block time. Like, I don't know what you want.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
but in that case, you just use exchange rates and most of the time and accept that whoever has the underlying control. At least that's what I tell people. Hey, yeah, sure, we can read the exchange rate on the contract on mainnet, but you should check basically who has control over that and what is the Oracle Council and so on. And with some LSTs, this is really, really shady. I think Lido and stuff is like pretty secure. They have their
Sure.
own council and so on. It's pretty controlled through updates, but in some LSTs, it's just literally a 2 out of 4 multisig and yeah.
Yeah, no, but I mean, even even if you're just looking at if a Uniswap pool's there, like Uniswap
Yeah,
pools are like by definition manipulable for a block or two.
yeah.
So like the security that this stuff passes through is very, very minimal, but it seems like not a whole lot of people necessarily want to think about that. So I'm
Until they get exploited. Yeah, like I'm fighting internal wars with this as well because there's a lot of dApps that just want a certain price, and then you tell them we can't like do that. They won't accept it, or like are pretty mad about it or whatever. But the thing is, all of these people raised money. There's investors behind it, and if anything goes wrong, they will 100% point at the Oracle and say, well, they built it because it must have been secure enough for them to consider it. That's why I'm going to die on that hill. But if shit hits the fan, people are going to point the finger at you. That's 100% given.
sure.
So I refuse to do stuff like that. And you might lose business, but at the end of the day, yeah, it's the bad PR is probably not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, well, where do you think the trend's going to go? Like, is it going to be that people are going to be building different smart contract? Like, I know Euler is working on doing some things, and they're at least experimenting with some designs. Or is it just going to be that people like whitelist some of this stuff, or you move to app chains? Like I think like the other potential way would be like everybody moves over to an app chain, and you just like don't have finality. like you're like, listen, we're just what was the hyperliquid thing? Like
Yeah,
you have a bad Oracle update, and we just revert it.
yeah.
Um,
That
which is fair, right?
it's actually a good question. Like I think there are too many L2s out there. I hope things don't go further into that direction. Maybe stuff gets better if liquidity is somehow. But currently it's a nightmare. Just basically it's becoming increasingly difficult to check what new L2 launched and by how many L2s approach you for oracles, and you're basically just replicating the same thing over and over for every chain. And most of the times the chain dies or is already dead on arrival. So you're doing all of this work for nothing. So I think it would be great if everything stayed on Ethereum, and it would be just, at least that's what I would prefer. Because you also have the trust assumption on all of these L2s. Like, I sound paranoid as hell, but I also turned into the biggest Bitcoin maxi ever 2 years ago, which served me well. But I don't necessarily trust all of these people running their sequences currently. And maybe in the future, when it becomes a bit like, it goes against what I think where things should be going. I am happy transacting on mainnet, and that's roughly it. And maybe something like Polymarket, but there I know what I'm signing up for effectively. And I hope that we go more towards that phase where you are shitcoining on mainnet and have these L2s do certain things but don't copy paste an entire chain ecosystem, like basically become an app chain and then somehow don't force people to accept incredible amounts of centralization for that. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean we had, like so we use you have to bridge TRB over and you have to stake it
Yeah.
and the problem is always like if an L2 wants us, now we have to bridge TRB over to your
Yeah.
L2 and hold it. And it's always like we're redesigning that now, but we actually lost a bunch of money with the Harmony bridge hack.
Yeah.
Because we had bridged money over and then the bridge gets hacked and goes away, and you're like, guys, this was awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like how do you tell users or any of your validators that? So yeah, hopefully that goes away. But but they're enshrining, or we're gonna have base rollups. It'll be good.
Yeah.
Um,
Hope so.
Um, yeah, and then I mean the last thing wanted to ask you like what's your guys' opinion on like zk-TLS? What are you guys doing with like do you think ZK could help some of this OEV stuff or at least even get some of the middlemen out of it?
Drawing a blank there, potentially. Haven't thought about it at all because it feels like that's so far into the future, maybe.
Still?
But yeah, maybe. But currently, like our focus mainly has been the OEV thing, and we're, I believe, at the spot where we can make use of that, and in a way where we don't have trouble integrating any chain and can integrate any dApp and immediately give them value. We have, as far as I know, the best split for dApps, and you see more and more people, like you said, being interested in it. Also, potentially the dApps forcing them. I mean, the Aave example is pretty much the thing that should tell everyone that they need to do OEV, which also now triggers Compound and so on to actively think about these things. And I mean, the other example, UMA pitched it to them. They didn't want to integrate it, and they just forced Chainlink to basically copy the UMA thing with UMA out of the picture. And now Chainlink is doing OEV, even though they for years shit talked any type of MEV activity, which is hilarious. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I guess also like does it lead to a negative incentive, like a negative game theory in the sense that like if the protocols get it back, are they not as incentivized to minimize it?
maybe if they get it back, but we it kind of depends how they what they do with it. Right. For instance, we have one protocol that's about to launch with it. As you know, like if somebody gets liquidated on Aave, for instance, some part of that liquidation fee goes to the searcher, but some parts also go to Aave as revenue. And we have one dApp that basically removed that protocol fee part entirely. They only have the searcher fee. And with that, whatever amount gets recaptured, that's what they see as the protocol fee, which effectively lowers everything for everyone involved. So you could do that, just see it as your revenue and remove any other arbitrary
Right.
protocol fees that you have. And but it becomes very situational because you only earn it when the market either goes up very fast or to shit very fast. So
Well, I mean, I was even thinking more on like in lines of like the MEV stuff, like like what's Ethereum's incentive to reduce MEV? It's like, well, a lot of your validators, your big supporters, Justin Drake runs one of the biggest,
yeah.
whatever. Like it's really, really hard to say like we're working on fixing this while we're making a whole bunch of money off of it. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
and people are happily paying it, right? Especially
right.
if you also look like if you draw it back to OEV, it's not like the dApps are losing this, right? This is always something that people have to remember. It's not like we're going and stealing money actively from the dApps. The dApps are just overcharging their users, and the users are currently very happy to accept that, apparently. And even if we recapture it, at least in our case, we're not telling you have to give this back to the user. It just becomes like additional revenues to them. So they're overcharging users and getting paid the money that they're overcharging users through this deal. And yeah, I doubt that they will. I mean, I like what Euler is doing, and if they somehow also incorporate OEV into it, where they, I think their average liquidation incentive currently is like at 3% or so. If last I checked, 3.5. If they somehow manage with another auction on the Oracle layer to reduce that even further, that would be great. But yeah.
Yeah. And then is there MEV on your chain?
Uh,
Do you hit like a different weird thing where like the MEV keeps going down the chain route?
I don't think so.
Well, you
Or
guys,
no, maybe actually, if you think about it, because we also update the respective gas token on our chain, and that is updated on like I think 1% deviation or whatnot. So technically, you could make a more efficient and better priced bid if you pull in the latest data and bid uh, if the price is not currently up to date, but it should be like basically deviation based,
Right.
minimal, and then it's a percentage of your bid that gets improved. Like if you make $100 bid, maybe we're talking mere cents here. But yeah, technically, yes.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Anything else we can go over on OEV? What did I forget or miss on that?
Um, I don't think so. Like everyone, even though everyone 2 or 3 years ago was shit talking, and everyone is kind of doing it now. I think that's the summary. There's different designs of how people do it, and yeah, I think in a year from now, every major protocol will be doing this. Pretty convinced of that.
Yeah, no, I'm curious to see. My big thing would be I'm curious to see whether how much of it goes back to the team versus going to a DAO or something like that, and um, how we actually use these things, or back to the user, ideally, right?
Yeah, I doubt it's going to go to the user. I think in Aave it's just going to go to the DAO. Compound similarly, it's just going to go to the DAO, and users are going to continue getting milked, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
no,
everyone is accepting it currently. Like if people would be rational, all of them would be using Euler currently. That's my opinion. But people are not rational. They let themselves get charged like a 10% liquidation fee on Aave instead, which is crazy. But yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, maybe kind of like you were saying at the beginning, there's other reasons people do certain things. You got
Yeah.
other token incentives that you're trying to pump up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything new for API3 coming up?
Don't think so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the rebrand for completely to OEV was very recent. So,
Yeah, effectively, like we built around this for 2 years or so. We
yeah.
released it. Now it's a hype, and we're just effectively trying to be the leaders in this. That's what we built for, and let's see where it takes us. I think there's a lot, like I said, a lot of protocols are gonna be doing this after they see that the big guns are also now accepting it.
Yeah. No, I think once it becomes standard, it should be good. But that, yeah, I'm just curious to see whether or not, yeah, I guess now you guys are competing not with oracles, but with flashbots. It's like,
I mean, it kind of depends, right? Because this is one of the downsides of the training solution, where they effectively just plugged into an auction system that they don't control at all. I think a lot of other people also did that. I think Redstone also just basically outsourced the matter. Yuma outsourced the matter. Pith built something on their own, and we built something on our own. So now you're kind of restricted on the availability of your auction mechanism if you can expand or not. And we can, and Chainlink currently cannot. But I'm pretty sure they're going to build something. But effectively, if Flashbots is not, I doubt Flashbots is going to be on every single chain. So they are forced to somehow build an auction mechanism themselves and dive into this. Otherwise, they, for instance, cannot go to Arbitrum or Base, which is very big opportunities for them to miss. And Aave also won't accept that. Like Chainlink is also just driven by what Aave tells them to do. Like Aave is going to be like, great, this works on mainnet. How about we want this on Base, Optimism, and Arbitrum as well? Thanks. And they're going to build it.
well, and like flashbots is almost like they like the default where there's no OEV capture, it's going to flashbots anyway, right? Just in the form of MEV. So like it's only down probably for them.
Yeah,
Like, in
I
this
think so.
case.
Like basically with Flashbots, I mean, it depends, right? I'm not sure if they are actually making any money with their relay. Do they?
Well, I think that it's only down for the searchers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because now
Yeah,
you have to give some of it back.
yeah.
So like you're like you don't want like as far as flashbots, people engaged in the flashbots ecosystem like don't want anyone to adopt this, like right?
Yeah, I would, but it kind of depends, right? Right? Like if Flashbots would be very well served to, let's say, somehow have an auction mechanism also on these other chains and have Chainlink
Sure.
plug into that because it allows their searchers to now make even more money on these other chains and potentially do so more reliably than they can extract MEV currently on L2s. I'm not sure if you looked into liquidations on L2s, but it's actually quite hilarious because people anticipate Oracle updates and that they just spam liquidations basically because they know at what deviation the Oracle is and they know where the market price currently is. So they anticipate when Chainlink is going to update, for instance, and spam liquidations. So you see reverts, 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 and then it hits, and it's quite hilarious stuff.
Well, this was old school MEV, right?
Yeah,
That's how it would look like on Ethereum
yeah,
before.
basically, and
Yeah.
it's copy paste on L2s because I looked into it, I believe, on Compound for Base or so, and it was hilarious to see the amount of gas that also gets wasted, and yeah, I mean the sequencer teams are probably not happy that anyone is like the chain teams that anyone is
Right.
optimizing this because they're making bank.
Yeah. No, that's funny. All right. Well, we shall link to your presentation. Is it out there?
Yeah, it was. Where was it? I forgot. I also made it a thing to not travel this year anymore because I've traveled to so many places last year. But yeah, something in Bangkok last November. And it
Um,
was the Oracle Summit actually, because Branda was also there.
all right. So that was the DevCon Oracle Summit then.
Yes, yes,
There you go.
correct.
Yeah, DevCon, not that
Yeah.
conference.
Yeah.
Anyway, where can people find out more? What can you do?
Uh, just go on our website, api3.org. It is tailored only to making sure you get paid by the Oracle that you use, and that's mainly it.
All right, man. Well, this was a blast. Yeah, thanks for chatting with me.
Thanks for your time.
See
Bye
you.
bye.